Who, of course, is the House Minority Whip and Democrat from Maryland. It's good to see you, Congressman. Good morning.
Hi, how are you, Chris? Good to be with you.
Let me ask you first about the Fox News poll, neck and neck, 46-46. Are you worried about that?
You know, I'm not worried about that. The polls go back and forth. We've seen the president as much as 9 points up in some recent polls. I think he is ahead. But clearly, in terms of favorable, unfavorable perceptions, they've been pretty steady. The president's numbers have been high, and Mr. Romney's numbers have been low. So from that standpoint, although people seem to go back and forth, but the president remains either tied or ahead in every poll that I've seen. So that's a positive sign at this point in time, I think.
There's been so much focus on the presidential campaign, but it's starting to shift a little bit to some of these hot congressional races. Let me play for you what John Boehner had to say yesterday.
I say there's a 2 in 3 chance that we win control of the House again. But there's a 1 in 3 chance that we could lose. And I'm being myself, frank. We got a big challenge, and we've got work to do.
Congressman Hoyer, where do you put the odds?
I think he's right. They've got a challenge. The Congress is unpopular. I think people voted for some folks who came to Washington and then created gridlock confrontation, took us to the precipice of national default. I think the American public are not pleased. So I think that when John Boehner says 1 in 3, you can bet your sweet life that's a lot lower, in my opinion, than it actually is. I think at worst it's a 50-50 chance. At worst for us, perhaps more. People want to see the Congress work. They've seen gridlock. They've seen the fact that the Republicans are a deeply divided party within themselves. They can't pass a highway bill that Speaker Boehner made his principal priority over the last 2 months. So I think that when the Speaker says 1 in 3, you can bet that he's trying to lowball that. He knows he has a big challenge. He does have a big challenge. We have some 64 districts in which we have very, very good challengers. In many of those, they've outraised incumbent Republicans. They're doing well in the polls. I think we're going to take back the House. I think the American people are going to want to see a change from the gridlock.
Really? Do you feel confident right now that the Democrats can take back the House?
I think we can take back the House. Yes, I do.
Well, let me ask you about 2 races in particular, because as you very well know, 2 blue dog Democrats in Pennsylvania this week lost their primary challenges. Both of them were, to be fair, vulnerable after redistricting, but both also happened to vote against the president's health care law. What's your take on what happened there?
Well, I think that you're going to see that we take both those districts. So, yes, we had Democrats on Democrats running against one another, and obviously one of the Democrats was going to lose. That happened. But I think we're going to win both of those districts in Pennsylvania. I think Mark Ritz is going to win. I think Matt Cartwright is going to win in the district in which I regret that Mr. Holden lost. He was a very good member of the Congress, but Mr. Cartwright's going to be a very good member of Congress as well. So we're going to win those districts. They're tough districts. The Republicans have had the same thing. You see the Manzullo loss in his race. So that what we're really going to look at is when we get Democrat versus Republican. And let me say something on the Blue Dogs and the moderate Democrats. We're going to have to win those districts. There's no doubt about it, if, in fact, we're going to take back the majority. And I think we're going to do that. In 2010, I've been running a lot of races over the last 40 years. It was the most virulent environment which I've seen, I think, in my career. People were extraordinarily angry. I think that anger is not totally dissipated, but it's certainly a lot less. There is apprehension, fear in some cases about where our country's going, and we need to get on the right track. But I think there's going to be a more positive atmosphere for Democrats running, and therefore I think in some of these moderate districts, which are by definition swing districts, I think they're going to swing back.
Well, let me ask you about the money that's involved here, because, again, we've been talking so much about how much it's going to cost this presidential race, but clearly some of these House and Senate races are going to set new records, too. And Steve Israel, who, as you know, is the head of the DCCC, sent out a fundraising email just like that based on John Boehner's comments. Is that really sort of where we are at this part of the political game? Set expectations low, kind of helps you fundraise?
Well, I think certainly fundraising is a critical component. And when you say where we are now, yes, we're on 6 months out about. And yes, we believe that making sure that people understand that when John Boehner says we have a 1 in 3 chance of winning, you can bet your sweet life it's a higher chance than that. And therefore, I think Steve Israel was saying to people who are seeing these extraordinary independent expenditures. We saw it in the Republican primary. Huge sums of money, in many cases by unnamed sources, unknown sources, trying to affect the elections. The good news for Democrats is many of our candidates around the country have outraised their incumbent opponents. And the DCCC, of course, the campaign committee that Steve Israel heads, has outraised the Republicans over the last 5 quarters. That's unheard of, where the minority party campaign committee outraises on a regular basis the majority party. But we're all concerned about these secret donations, this secret money that politics is in a wash now, that resulted from the Supreme Court's decision. And it's unfortunate the American people are not being told who's spending the money to try to influence them and change or forge their opinions. If they don't know the source, and my mom used to tell me, consider the source. If they don't know the source, it's very difficult for them to evaluate correctly the information they're getting. So money is certainly an issue, and secret money ought to be a very big issue in this campaign. We want to see disclosure. We want to have the American public have transparency of who's financing these campaigns.
Congressman Steny Hoyer, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Let me bring back the